Welcome to The Fix. I'm your host, Brock Bevell. Today on the show, I have Travis O'Connor. Travis, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for visiting.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we have about 13 minutes to provide, to reach our goal, to provide people with tangible solutions to recovery. I know that you're a local here.
Yes, sir.
How long you lived in the show, though?
Born and raised.
Born and raised.
Yeah, grew up and down the valley, but back and forth between the two.
I know a little bit of your history, but our audience does not know your history. Can you just give us a childhood, kind of a small complex?
Small complex.
Yeah.
Grew up down the valley in South Phoenix and Mesa area, on the rougher side. Grew up rough, fighting, drugging, drinking, the whole 9 yards.
So what age did you experience active addiction?
Started drinking when I was about 13, 14 years old.
Okay.
Didn't start getting into drugs until later on in life.
I know your history. You had some family members that were in active addiction as a youth.
Yes, yeah. Okay. There was always pot in my house, always, which I never saw an issue with. I never saw anything hard in the house, but around the neighborhood and with friends and stuff like that, there was always drugs.
So it was kind of a slower process. When did you realize you were first kind of hooked, or that addiction was starting to set in?
Probably about 17 when I started getting into trouble and looking at prison time, is when I started realizing that the drugs were a way of life for me.
Do you remember the first time you used?
Yeah, it was, I started doing meth when I was about 15 years old.
So 15 years old. Did you ever try to get sober on your own?
I did.
Did it work?
Did not work. There was a lot of people around me that I stayed around these friends a lot, thinking that everything was going to be all right, and it never turned out all right.
So you tried it alone. What was the longest stint of sobriety did you have when you tried to do it alone?
The longest stint was just my times in prison.
Okay.
You know, and then I'd get out of prison and I'd do parole and any kind of paper, and then when I got off of paper, it was on. I was back in it.
Okay. So you mentioned prison. A lot of people talk to us. They come into our program. They see us in the community. Said, I hope my child goes to prison because they'll get sobriety. They'll find sobriety. They'll find all this clarity there. What's your opinion?
Big negative. Big negative. If you want to learn how to become a better criminal, then that's the way to do it. I never learned anything about sobriety while I was in prison. I got better connections. I learned to be a little bit tougher, and I got to meet some strong people, but we were all in for crimes. So
when you left, you still had these similar connections?
I did.
And you stayed with them?
Yeah, and some of them got sober over the years, and I'm still friends with those guys. We got out of the crime syndicate, if you will. Stopped doing drugs, hard drugs. Stopped robbing places, stealing bikes, stuff like that. You know, over the years, a couple of those good friends of mine, still really good friends of mine.
Right. So because I know your history, you stopped meth years ago.
Yeah, 17.
Okay. And then what carried on? What continued to kind of bind you to addiction?
The alcohol.
Okay.
Alcohol. And I never realized it until recently that I just substituted my meth use to alcoholism, because I never thought that alcohol was a problem. And it wasn't until recent that I realized that I just full-blown alcoholic.
So what was that turning moment? How did you find out that you were an alcoholic, or even just admitted it?
It wasn't until the 2 days before I came in the program. I went to work about 10 o'clock in the morning, or I opened the bar at 10 o'clock in the morning. By noon, I had a bottle of tequila down, and I just wanted to die. I just wanted to lay down and die. I did not want to do anything else. And the bar owner, good friend of mine, that's when he realized that I had taken it too far.
Okay.
And he took me in.
So you had someone in the community grab you, hey, say, Travis, I see you're struggling, let's go find help.
Absolutely.
So you tried to do it on your own, didn't work very well. You tried to do it with prison, that didn't work very well. How'd you feel like, I mean, not always a proponent of recovery, but whatever works for you. Does that make sense? Because we're going to talk about, you did some things in recovery that blow my mind.
Right.
Right? So why do you feel like it worked for you?
The people that I met, the tools that I learned, the good people throughout the community that I didn't know that were actually involved a lot with recovery, really helped me along the way. The classes that we do on a daily, just grabbing pieces here and there, you know, some classes work for people, some classes don't. AA is not my strong suit. I don't like it, but it works for other people, so I'm all for it.
Right.
Mine was different outlets, different people teaching different classes.
So if you could give one tool, speaking to a lot of people, one tool that would help, that worked for you, what would it be?
My biggest thing was the change. Change everything. The placement of my couch, the pillows, the moving pictures around the house. One of the old students taught that, and it grabbed hold of me like no other. And I went into my house and changed everything.
Even your pillowcases.
It erased so many memories, or just changed the memories and changed the thought pattern, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so I kind of mentioned that you've done some things in recovery that I wasn't a fan of. We hear in recovery, we hear in just addiction itself that you have to change specific elements of your life to progress. One of them is your people, your places, and your things.
Right.
Okay, so that's what we teach. So what we actually are proponents of, and especially for me, is I just had to get away from everything. Well, you did just the opposite. That drove me crazy. And when you told me about it, I was like, this guy's nuts. Like, I don't know how it works, because I'd never seen anybody else really recover from it. We've had people mention it, but let me give you a background a little bit. If I'm scared of the pool, I got to get in the water to overcome that fear.
Right.
If I'm scared of heights, which we take our guys rappelling,
right.
They got to overcome it. But you took it to a whole nother level.
Yes, sir.
So can you share with the audience what you did? And I want to preface it, this does not work for everybody.
It does not work for everybody.
But it worked for you, which I'm really impressed with.
One of the key things that I learned while in recovery was nobody lies to you better than yourself. And so that first weekend where I was able to go out on my own and kind of get out there, I wanted to know if I'm just lying to myself. I wanted to know, am I capable? And so I went right back to my addiction. I went right into the bar and I faced my demon head on, because I realized that every Circle K, every Shell station, beverage house, everything on this mountain is places that I've bought my alcohol, and I'm going to be in them stores. So am I going to be capable of maintaining a normal life and not buy alcohol?
So let's back up. So, because you kind of brushed over it, and I need to make sure that we understand that you worked at a local bar.
Yes, sir.
The weekend that you were able to leave, you went back to the bar, but you did some specific. You protected yourself. You did some you used some tools to make sure that you stayed sober and aware. Can you share with us what you did?
So my number one thing was I was honest to everybody around me. Every person that I'm going to make contact with, I told them that I was an alcoholic and that these are my triggers and this is what I'm going to do and this is how you pull me out of it. Like, I was honest to every family or every person that I consider family. And they knew to keep an eye on me while I did this. And
so you put the responsibility on them as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because we learned in recovery, you need that accountability buddy. You need proper people in your life. The ones that keep saying, hey, travel, let me buy you a shot, let me buy you a shot, those guys I don't need them. Just go away.
Don't need them in my life.
Right? The one guy that comes up and says, hey, travel, let me buy you a shot. No, I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink no more. The guy that goes, oh man, I'm sorry, and he backs off, that's the guy I want around me.
So we talk a lot about team. Can you share what that means for other people? Because that's probably one of our biggest teaching moments. Explain it.
So the teamwork, your team is not only the people in recovery, but the people outside of recovery. The bar owner, Evan, he is one of my biggest team members. Even though he owns a bar and he's watched me go through all this, I tell that man everything. And it's very important to have guys and gals outside of recovery that will have your back. Because if I look over at the head bartender and I tell her, hey, I'm triggering, she's quick to get on it and get me out of the situation.
So explain what a trigger is. We brush kind of by that, but what's a trigger?
A trigger is just a thought. Just if I smell tequila, I want to drink. If I look at whiskey, I have these flashbacks of doing a shot of whiskey or something like that. And what's great nowadays is I can smell that and I kill that right then and there. It took me a while to get to that point, and I work on it on a daily basis. It's something that I'm going to be working on for the rest of my life.
So you get the trigger, and then you said you killed it.
I kill it.
So what does that mean, you killed it?
I kill it. So we learned that a trigger, if left untouched, will sooner or later turn into a thought and then turn into a craving. And then it's on from there.
It's on.
It's on. So we learned how to kill those triggers in a heartbeat.
So what is one of the tools that you use? So you said you go to the bar, you smell it, you talk to somebody, you exclude yourself. What works for you?
Nowadays, well, when I first got out of recovery, I had this method, the 5-4-3-2-1 method that we learned.
Yeah.
It's a really good tool that I use on a daily, and we get to the 5 things we see and I start giggling because I start remembering what we did in class.
Right.
Right. And so I've never even, the picture, I've never even made it to 4 because I start giggling and I move.
Because that trigger lasts 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
And so all we're trying to do is divide our attention to pull it away from that trigger.
Yes.
Those thoughts, and then it's over with. Excellent. So I, with the sake of time, number one, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for showing me different ways. First of all, in recovery,
right.
We do get it set in our own ways. But I want to end with one question from the community. Now that you're out of recovery, you're experiencing many sober days. How has your sobriety changed the atmosphere of your home?
Oh, it's beautiful. The communication that I have with my kids, my kid's mom, even some of my own family members, you know, I learned how to take that pause. If something's done that I don't appreciate or I don't like, I learned how to take that pause before I react. You know, where when in my addiction, I just reacted.
So have your children noticed the difference?
Oh, big time, man, big time, yeah.
I want to commend you because I've actually spoken to your children. I know them, and they see a totally different guy, totally different dad.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with The Fix. Welcome back to The Fix. I'm your host, Brock Bevell. I now have another guest join us today, Tina Savage. Tina, how are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Tina, I am so excited about this conversation. I feel like I've known you forever. I feel like I've known your history. You've been involved in recovery for a long time, and in our recovery, and you're an anomaly.
Well,
right?
thank you.
You're an anomaly, which is a good thing. You were able to do, I don't want to say something, but I guess that's the word, something that many people don't. I pulled some stats this week, and I know that you were a child of a family member who was addicted to drugs. And the stat reads, children of addicts are 8 times more likely to develop an addiction if it's in their home. 8 times likely. So I'm going to get into how you broke it.
Okay.
But I don't want to say but what I want to share with you is a couple things. Is you being raised in addiction, you were so open, you were so honest about it. Most of us, I'm an addict, I have a family member that's addicted to drugs, and it feels like we want to hide it. We want to bury it, we want to cover it up, we want to wear this mask like everything's okay. What did you do to break through that? Because you're very well known in this community. How did you do it?
How did I break the addiction?
How did you break that stigma of not wanting to talk about it?
You have to tell your story. You can't help anybody if you don't tell your own story. I mean, that's simple. You can't hide at home and pretend like it doesn't exist, because there are so many people out there with the same thing. They're going through the same thing.
Did you hide your story for a long time?
I did, until 4 years ago when I came and talked to Blue Vase.
Yeah, I remember the
yes.
day I asked you, Tina, will you come share your story? And you went pale on me.
Oh, I was
like,
shaking. I was nervous. I was like, what are they going to say? What do they think about me? It was crazy.
So those feelings that you had, can you expand on them?
So, I mean, a little bit. By the age of 6, I had already seen what drug abuse was, alcoholism, domestic violence. I was abandoned by my mother, sexually assaulted by her boyfriend, like you name it. I went through it all before I was 6 years old. I grew up around it. Then I was raised by my grandmother. And then I don't know how I broke that cycle. I just didn't want to do it. Like I grew up just playing sports was my outlet. You know, my brother and sister both struggled with drugs, and I was just one of those girls that, like, I tried to smoke at 15 and thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I thought, if this is what drugs and alcohol is about, I don't want anything to do with it. So I just hung out with the right people, and I played sports. I think that's what broke the cycle. I just didn't want that struggle.
So 1 out of 3 came out of your home without addiction.
Yes.
Your brother was affected by addiction.
He was.
He overdosed.
He almost.
Correct.
Yes.
Overdosed. Still doing well today.
Oh, he's doing great. He found Jesus, and he's doing amazingly well.
And then you had a sister. Mm-hmm. And how's her recovery going?
She is sober. She was addicted to meth for several years. It's affected her health. It had her children were taken away from her because of it, you know. And even as we were growing up, we lived in roach hotels, you know, apartments with roaches. There was just so much. I don't know if gross is the word, but I just didn't want to live that way. And I kind of looked at it, that's what addiction was.
So why did it take you so long, knowing your personality? You talk to people, you have no problems talking to people. But
No.
why did it take you so long to share your story? I mean, it's epic. It's a big story.
You know, it was Blue Vase. I did not share my story. I kept it inside. I was angry. I was ashamed. I didn't want anyone to know that I was abused. I didn't want anyone to know that there was addiction in my family.
Hold on, let's stop there. Back up. But you weren't the addict.
No.
But you said you were ashamed, embarrassed. Why? If you weren't the addict, why were these emotions so attached to you?
Living with addiction, you're told it's your fault. You know, it's your fault you're a bad kid, so your mom left you. It's your fault that I want to drink. It's your fault that I want to watch pornography. You know, and you take that in. People take that as literally, like, it's my fault that my husband's doing this, or my dad, or, you know, my son. And it just took me years. Deshaun is the one. He said, Tina, you should come teach at Blue Vase. And I said, why? I'm not an addict. What do I have to offer? Well, it's the other side of the addiction, the damage that the other side goes through.
So talk to us. Share that a little bit, because we need to hear it. Because we are kind of selfish. We just talk about ourselves, and we just talk about the addicted, but we fail to talk about those who are deeply affected by it.
Oh, growing up knowing that your mom doesn't want you because she would rather be out drinking or doing drugs, that affects you. I was angry for a long time. I don't remember, but my dad said I used to beat kids up all the time because I was so angry.
I can see that.
So I was addicted to somebody that was an alcoholic and addicted to porn, and he just drilled it in my head that it was my fault.
Do you feel like the instruction you received or the example you received as a kid kind of pushed you into a marital situation where there was addiction in the home? Because that's what you knew?
Because that's what you're used to. You know, I grew up when you have an argument or you disagree, you throw things, you punch things. You know, I watched my mom be beaten because they disagreed. And it just makes you think this must be normal. You know, sexually abused, you think, okay, this is normal. You know, these people are supposed to take care of you. You're supposed to trust them, and they're doing these things to you, so you think that's a normal way of growing up.
Did you get it? Do you think you got attached to the chaos?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Do you feel like that's an addiction to itself?
I think so, and I wanted to control everything. I didn't have control of what happened to me when I was little, so I was controlling everything. Where my kids went, where my ex-husband was, like I wanted to know, where are you, when, what time, you know, all those things. I was angry. When there was a conflict, I would scream and yell and punch things and throw dishes, like I was that person. And then I got pregnant, and I'm like, I can't bring my children into this world with this anger and this chaos, and I had to get it away from me.
So how did you do it?
You know, it took a lot. I found God. I always found God. You know, I went through suicidal thoughts when I was younger with my 3 kids, because my ex-husband told me I was worthless and I would never amount to anything. And I prayed one day, just, God, take me. I just need to be off this earth. I'm not good enough for my kids. And he sent my Trinity, my little girl, into the room. And that was the last day I thought of it. And it was just that beginning, like, okay, I need to get out of this situation. I need to rely on God. I need to rely on my kids. And I just need to surround myself with people that do love me and love myself.
So that was 18 years ago. Trinity's 18, right?
She is.
She's 18. So 18 years ago. So there was just a mental switch that you said, hey, I can't continue with the chaos?
Well, it was God. Like, people, you know, they think God doesn't talk to me. I want to see God. He did that day. He answered me. He sent Trinity. And that was my wake-up call, that I have purpose in this life. And I need to stop feeling sorry for myself or being the victim. And I'm not the victim. You know, I'm a survivor, and I got through it. And I want to help other people who are stuck in there, sitting at home wondering, you know, is this my fault? Do I control everything because of what happened? Am I angry because of what happened to me? You just got to let it go, because life is too short.
I hope Trinity's watching this. I hope she has a chance to kind of hear this part, because she's an amazing. Well, and I know your children. I know your current husband, phenomenal individuals. But from seeing and hearing what you came from, like, this is a massive example of restructuring your life and changing yourself. But today, do you still have any wounds that are carried from your past?
Oh, absolutely. I still get insecure at times. You know, if my husband travels for the weekend, I still get those triggers of, like, you know, what's going on? What's he doing? My ex-husband was addicted to porn, so that, you know, there's a trigger when we watch movies sometimes, and there's addiction in the movie. It triggers something. If a child is molested in a movie, it triggers some of those feelings. But I immediately start talking. You know, I'll tell my husband, I'll tell my daughter, I'll tell God, and that's the huge thing in it. You have to communicate right then and there how you feel.
But isn't it crazy how those emotions from so many years, I mean, Trinity's 18, so it's way before that, and we're still being triggered today by occurrences, trauma, I would say, that occurred years ago. So other than your triggers and relationships, did it have any effect on your kids?
Oh, my kids, their father was an alcoholic, and he was addicted to porn, so there was a lot of fighting in the house. He would disappear a lot, and then he abandoned them. So he walked out of their lives, I would say 12 years ago, maybe longer. And they have abandonment issues. They have issues with relationships. They're afraid to get close to people sometimes. They're all doing way better. So it's amazing how well the kids are doing. But yeah, they had that trauma too of being abandoned, and it wasn't my fault.
So how open and honest are you with your kids about it?
Completely, 100%. We're very close because we are so open with each other. You have to be. You have to communicate. You have to say how I feel. You have to get those wounds out. Otherwise, they're going to stay in. It's like the skunk in the basement. I told Blue Vase that. What happens if you have a skunk in your basement? Makes the whole house stink.
Yeah.
Get rid of that skunk and air it out and get that out.
But that's scary. I always share it's like a monster under my bed, and I gotta take that thing and rip it out and share it with people. But it's hard.
It is.
It's hard. So what ultimately, where do you put your normalcy? Where do you put your calm today? With all that trauma in the past, how are you able to function so well?
With God. I pray a lot. He talks to me a lot. And the church, I'm involved with the church. I have a ton of friends. Blue Vase has helped me overcome a lot. I have a tattoo on my back of a blue vase and a butterfly, because that was the beginning of me opening up, because I could never talk to anybody. You know me. Like, I'm doing announcements at church now, I'm talking to people, and I could never have a conversation one-on-one because I was too shy. So all of that, just surround yourself with good people and tell your story.
And I don't want to disagree with you, but I don't totally agree with that. You didn't want to speak about your trauma, because that was hard, because you're willing to talk to anybody at any time about anything else.
Nope, not before Blue Vase. I was very shy. I didn't want to have conversations. I was always the one that kind of stood back and watched people, because if you talk to them, you know, they get to judge you. Whatever you say, you might sound stupid, you know, different things like that. So it wasn't until Blue Vase, a good husband, a good church, that it just started opening up.
People.
And now I want to help other people in the same situation.
Okay, we will continue to invite you to do that.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you for watching The Fix. I'm Brock Bevell. If you know someone who is struggling or affected by addiction, there is hope. There's always help out there. Please don't give up. You're important and your life matters. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.